Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. We're on now. This is better. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. And today we have the much anticipated and much spoken about guest, Devin Halliday, who is an award-winning sales leader with a diverse background and passion for people. So one of the things that I've been working on over the last few months is getting more people on here who already have a podcast. And the reason is I want to make sure that there's value for you guys who are listening. After you listen to them on my podcast, you can go follow them and actually get more of their content. And so he actually hosts a podcast called the Belonging Factor Podcast, where he evaluates the dialogue around diversity, inclusion, and of course, belonging. He's the co-founder and chief belonging architect at Rudiment Solutions, a people empowerment company that works with individuals and organizations to thrive in all things people, process, and profits. Super excited to have him on here because really what this is about, the Fuel Your Legacy podcast, is how to identify your identity and then how to live your identity and how to make sure you're remembered for your identity. And so today we're going to talk about how to understand your authentic purpose, align your life with that, and then how to make decisions for yourself on your journey rather than having them be made by others. So that being said, we are super excited to have you on, Devin, and we're going to let you kind of just introduce yourself, where you came from, as far as your story, corporate America to entrepreneurship, and where you're at now and where you're headed.
Awesome, Sam. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you very much for the opportunity to connect and share, and everybody listening, thanks for the gift of your time too. So let me give a good little dissect here of my journey. I grew up in a really, really kind of progressive family in Northern California, where we had a lot of very progressive values, things around, skin color or gender. None of those things were things that were taught in some way to be differences for me. And that's something I share because at the time I had no idea how much that was going to inform things I did later on in life and what I'm doing now. But that's an important piece to kind of put a marker in there. Now, the other thing I did growing up was went to air shows, went and saw the Blue Angels, and fell in love with this idea of being in the military. So from as a young kid, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in the military. I'm going to be in aviation. And then the movie Top Gun came out, and that just fueled it even more. And I knew at that point as a child in my heart that I needed to go be in this place. This place was going to be a place that for me in the Navy, in aviation, it was going to really be my lasting lifelong career. And well, fast forward 15 years and there I was in the Navy, in aviation, living on an aircraft carrier based in Japan, making sure that all of these amazing pilots and amazing aircraft got off the ground and in the air. And I loved it. It was amazing experiences, the journey of learning about other people, how other people operate from different backgrounds was fascinating to me. And that's another important marker in this story of my journey, is that idea of starting to understand the differences of people as advantages or benefits to an organization and to each other. And so one thing, maybe two things kind of happened in succession in the military where I realized that this wasn't my place. I wasn't going to build a legacy in the military. And ultimately, it was that I fell in love with aviation and planes and the fascination of how cool the Blue Angels were and all that stuff. But what's the reality? The reality is in the military, you are mission oriented, mission focused, and at the end of the day, you deliver on the mission. And we had some missions that kind of sequentially that were pretty aggressive missions in the Middle East. And it really dawned on me that as cool as the military, as cool as aviation is and all of these high performance aircraft are, I'm still in the military. and we are doing things from a, foreign policy standpoint, not just national security standpoint, that maybe don't align with my values. And so there's another marker that's really important for us to take a look at is me really for the first time at, somewhere around 19, 20 years old, starting to get this understanding that you don't have to do things that aren't aligned with your values, not long term anyways, right? I had a contract with the military and I needed to fulfill that, but I chose not to pursue that any further because there was a little bit of a misalignment of values. And, again, I didn't have any understanding of just how big of a deal that was going to be and how much it was going to inform my life later on. But after I got in the military, I joined corporate America. And I joined this, fairly new cell phone company called Verizon. Maybe some folks have heard of it.
Fairly
Uh,
new. I love that.
yeah, I mean, at the time it was brand new. In 2000, it didn't even exist actually until April of 2000. So it was, it was really exciting. It was a really cool time, and I was a part-time person, and then eventually became a salesperson, and was just kind of doing a job, so to speak, after my time in the military. And for me, I found that I really enjoyed being able to learn about and leverage the differences in people, and how to bring those together to be able to close sales initially, and then as I became a person involved in management and then eventually in leadership, how to actually make those things competitive advantages. And so thinking back to my time where I was raised, not to see differences as anything really, whether it was gender or ethnicity. um, I didn't see any of those as differences, but then the reality of the world exists, right? And we have all of these influences and biases that come up, and so it gave me energy to be able to work with people to help them leverage their differences as strengths, and then build teams that had people from all sorts of different backgrounds as strengths. And that became something that for me, I would say, built my career on as I continued to move up and move around the country. Uh, i became known for taking over teams, and in many cases not having to, low performing teams, not having to turn anybody over, just figuring out what everybody brings to the table and how to bring that synergy together. And again, so now we're talking about kind of starting to really live in a value set, um, that I had kind of defined, or at least came to understand when I was in the Navy. Now, as we progressed through 18 years of being at Verizon, certainly I had the opportunity to do that with many teams all over the place. Well, a big part of my story happens when Verizon asked me to move to Hawaii. Sounds horrible, right? You got to go to Hawaii, and to look after stores across all the islands. And of course, I jumped at the chance. And when I got to Hawaii, um, I really learned a lot about white privilege, is what kind of I call it, right? My privilege, and how I didn't have it in Hawaii. I was definitely in the population minority from an ethnicity standpoint. And that really stood out to me as something that, for the very first time in my life, I didn't have access to certain things. People were not treating me in the same way that maybe they were before, and that's where I came to understand that there was a bit of a privilege that came along with some of these things that maybe I didn't realize or give any credence to before. And so I became kind of fascinated at that point with creating a sense of belonging for everybody, whether you operate and live in a class that has been on the the wrong side of the opportunity divide, or somebody who's had every opportunity available to you. And that really informed then for me what my values were all about, and where I wanted to continue to build the rest of what I did as a career, and ultimately I think a legacy, although I don't know that I was thinking about it in those terms at that point. And then here's where all of the shift happened. I eventually moved from Hawaii to Pennsylvania, to look after the business here. Spent 6 years here, and last October 26th, my father suddenly and unexpectedly passed away from a heart attack, and it was fairly traumatic, as those who've been in that situation know. But here, to kind of add to this dynamic, just the year before, not even a full year before, my parents had lost their home in a fire, a California wildfire that took out a good portion of the town of Santa Rosa.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're talking about, a lot of trauma, a lot of things going on. My parents had just bought a new house and they're getting ready to close escrow on it. And when my dad passed away, so I took leave from work. I went to go be with my mom to help out with everything that was going on. And that's where a bit of that identity crisis kind of moment started to happen for me, where I said, I've been working 18 years for somebody else's dream, and we're going through a big reorganization right now. And I get to do what I'm passionate about, but I also have all of the other responsibilities that I have to do. I wonder if I could take this on my own and just do what I want to do full time and start living and working from my dream. And I talked to many folks about it. And of course, the advice I got was don't make any big decisions like that in a trauma situation, right? And that was a shock trauma situation for sure. So yeah, I spent a little bit of time on it, and eventually I asked if I could be part of the reorganization process that was happening at Verizon, and they were kind enough to grant that to me. And that was one of the most wonderful and amazing feelings. At the same time, a little bit bittersweet, because there were so many people over 18 years that I was working with and did work with, that I respected and valued so much, that I learned from. But really, I knew what had to happen in that moment, and it seemed like it was the right marker, the right time. And as a matter of fact, just 2 days before my father had passed away, I had actually shared with him that I was having some of these thoughts already. And so he was very supportive and encouraging of it. So a little bit of it was kind of like, I think maybe weighed in that, you know, let's make dad proud. Let's work for something bigger than somebody else's dream. And then that was the pivotal moment for me, where I made the hard decision to make the shift and to go on my own as an entrepreneur and spread this idea of aligning your values and your passion and people together to create amazing cultures and amazing teams to deliver outstanding results. And now I've been doing that for about the last year, working with organizations of all sizes and people of all backgrounds to be able to do that. And it's honestly been the most rewarding and fulfilling I've ever been in my entire life. In fact, my wife says this is like living with a different person, which is, I think, a compliment.
Yeah, so that could go both ways, good or bad, right? So what do you feel like is one of the biggest things that separate, like, help, I guess, I don't know how to ask this question right, but what do you think pulls people out of a sense of belonging the most?
The first thing that gives anybody an inclination that this may not be the place that I belong is usually when trust is broken. That is usually the number one thing, whether that's in relationships, personal relationships, or whether that's in a relationship with an employer or a boss directly, or maybe coworkers who are doing something that is, lacks integrity, but nobody's doing anything about it, right? It could be something as simple as that too. That's the number one thing that I would tell you, because that is an indicator of a misalignment of values. Because really, the foundation of belonging is this sense of aligned values, the sense of aligned purpose and shared interest, or shared common goal, that and not just common goal, but also the common way of behaving and achieving that goal. That's where you have these teams that can work so incredibly well together, that can deliver these really incredible results. But then maybe some dynamic changes and that starts to fall apart. On the opposite side of that, you have a leader who can take over any team or build any business, and it doesn't matter what the prior history was of performance of that team, or it doesn't matter if this business was prior failing or not. This leader has that innate ability to build that sense of trust and aligned shared values and create that sense of belonging so that team performs. And that was the genesis of what really got me studying all of these people throughout my career and then post career, and led to writing this book and doing the podcast.
That's interesting. Trust is I would agree that trust is the foundation of whether you feel comfortable somewhere. But I feel like belonging, and I don't know, you're obviously more of an expert on this topic than I am, but I wonder how much of belonging has to do with understanding oneself versus the outward positioning of other circumstances.
Yeah, so that's a tremendous point, and in fact, I write a lot about this idea of authenticity, right? And I don't mean that in the buzzword sense. I mean that in, I define it in the book, but the you have to know your own plus deltas. You have to self-analyze incredibly well and be true and honest with yourself. Because if you don't do that, how can you ever align values? How can you ever understand what feels right or feels wrong? Truly, if you don't have that definition first and you don't have that mindset first, right? To be who you say you are or be who you think you are and live that yourself. So that is without a doubt of the 5 characteristics that I identified that really make up this belonging factor. That is without a doubt number 1, core, most important. So you're right on the spot.
Yeah, because that's what I found. It's interesting because I've taken like they're like the love language test or personality test or whatever, but they're things to help you like identify or wiggle down like what are your core values, what's most important to you, and some of those things don't even have the word that I would say is my core value. My at first and foremost, my core value is candor. If I were to put it in one word, candor is extremely important to me. And then with candor is love and gratitude. Those are like those are my 3 things that I think if you were to say these are Sam's core values, that's it. Um, but I think a lot of people, they don't even know what their core values are. They don't know who they want to be or become. And so it makes it, uh, I should say, it leads to unfulfilling placement when they go in to get a job or to go work on something or for something or be in a relationship or whatever it is. They're looking for the wrong thing, and they've never really identified inside of themselves whether they feel like they belong with themselves.
Yeah, and that's what I call the belonging deficit, right? And it's actually, a fairly big issue, particularly with the rise in popularity of social media. I'm not bashing social media in any aspect
Sure.
whatsoever. I think it's great. However, when if you find yourself ever in that trap of, you know, being upset because one Instagram photo only got 300 likes and another one got 2,000, or some other friend posted almost the same picture and it got double the likes or whatever, you know, and being emotionally invested in that outcome, that is surely something that has increased in time, where we have this dopamine rush right away when we get that 2000 like one, but then the one that has only 300 likes, we're getting upset and we got cortisol running through our brain and we're trying to figure out what's going on and why it's not right, and we chase it because that there was no sense of belonging. There was this immediate gratification from that first one, and then the second one with fewer likes or whatever, that's the one that kind of sets us off, and so that actually shows up in so many other real world places, offline places, when you have this kind of conditioned element that exists, that social media has allowed to kind of happen more frequently. That's the only thing I would bash on social media is, man, we communicate a lot, right? There's a ton of human to human interface through digital technology that is tremendous, but also is something that if kind of untamed, or if our values aren't fully aligned, we end up with that belonging deficit, that feeling that all of these friends that we've collected aren't necessarily real friends because that person didn't like my photo or that person commented on hers but not mine. That kind of stuff that sometimes pops up and stays with us even into our adulthood, and then translates into our work life.
Yeah,
So and
absolutely.
so gave a compliment at the meeting to George but did not to me. Why? What's up with that? Right? As opposed to just taking it for what it is. Yeah, George, you did a freaking awesome job, man.
Yeah, exactly. So how does somebody go about, I mean, from, because like I said, I've taken multiple quizzes and things, but what would you say? Is there a process? Is it something you walk through with your clients, or what? How do you help somebody identify what their authentic purpose is or their values so that they can start aligning things to that? Like, how do you help somebody understand their core values and their authentic purpose?
Yeah, perfect question. So let me take, I'll talk about this in two senses. First is as kind of an institutional sense or as an organization, and then other one as an individual. So I'll tackle individual first. And by the way, they're very, very similar approaches because at the end of the day, an institutional organization is all just a
Sure.
group of people, right?
Yeah.
So
It's an identity still rather.
yeah, you got it. So here's the genesis of it. Write down what you think your values are, what you say your values are, and kind of maybe do it in a bullet point fashion. So left side of the paper, bullet points, candor, love, gratitude, right? These are values that are super important to you, and list them all out. To
Hmm.
the right, next to each one, write down the behaviors that you currently do to demonstrate that that is a value of yours. And what you'll find in the work that I do, because this is the exact same process I do for organizations, we just take whatever their culture code or value statements are and then write down where those would show up as behaviors within different roles or different functional teams of an organization. So it's the exact same process for institutional. The trick here though is what I find so often is that there is a whole list of actions or behaviors that do exist for a couple of the values, but then there's a kind of a gap on one or two or maybe three or four of the other values. And so then that's the point where we ask the question of, is this really truly a value that's super important to you and you're not doing it? So it's an execution issue. Or is this really aspirational and not what you truly hold currently as a value? So now what we then do is we start to do the work on what things must be true in your life to make this value that you say you want to have, to make it actually live and show up. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, it does. So, with that, then, um, how? I mean, again, you've been doing this for a year personally, but maybe longer in all of your team building and leadership roles. How often do people think they have a value or have a almost like a they've adopted a value or an identity? I would use the word identity, but we can use the word value. So they've adopted a value based on what they think other people think their value should be, rather than just adopting it because they want it.
Yeah, so we can absolutely call that an identity because I don't believe that that is necessarily a value. We wouldn't. I don't think we would call it a value. And I can share just a very quick real life example of that happening to me. My very first job as a store manager with Verizon, managing a wireless retail store. I ended up with um, managing a team that I was actually a salesperson for, and which is rare, but it happens. And so, when I got the job as the manager, I wanted to do everything the way I did things as a sales rep, and I wanted to tell everybody how they had to do their things. Why did I do that? I did that because that was the way a person who was very, very successful as a store manager, who I reached out to for advice, told me to do it. And so I shaped my identity and mirrored my identity after his, because I hadn't really built a leadership identity, right?
Right.
And and so about 6 months in, our numbers are kind of dropping slightly, steadily, while we're getting tons and tons of traffic in the door. And I can't figure it out. And I'm, barking commands at everybody. And
Sure.
I had one of my employees come to me and say, you know what, this just isn't going to work at all. In fact, you're going to have a mutiny on your hands if you don't do something about it. And for me, that was a pivotal moment where I had to really realize that I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And so now to answer your question, how often do I think that's a thing in the corporate world? Um, Exceedingly often. It's incredibly common, and it's common for two reasons that I see a lot. One is because there are some people, some leaders, managers who like to have people around them who are like them, And so that teaches the prospective candidate pool that to get promoted, you need to be like the big boss and act like the big boss, talk like the big boss. And all you do is you create silos. And then the other reason is just genuinely out of a lack of understanding who you really are, what's important to you, and what your leadership identity really is. Um, and in both cases, that's fine as long as you're willing to address it and be your authentic self.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. I love this. Um, Again, this is going to go down. I can already tell this is going to go down as one of my like top 10 podcasts that I've recorded. I think these topics, they're some topics are more. I don't even say more valuable or more important, but I think how different people approach them or address them could transform a topic. And I've talked about this with a few different people, but I love your approach of understanding, and I guess that comes probably from your own diversity growing up, your own orientation towards diversity growing up, that lends a lot more to, okay, now I'm going to be able to help other people see what I see at the very least, and that can be an authentic vision for somebody, which is crucial. I think with any time you're stepping out though, and as you did go from a corporate career of 18 years and step into your own thing, like tell us a story of your biggest naysayer and how you learned to silence them in your mind.
Oh, well, so I'll tell you this. I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by some very encouraging and positive people. But that being said, there's always naysayers, right? And maybe part of making sure that I have a good, clear understanding of my values, what's important to me, has informed kind of who I surround myself by, which is maybe why not so many naysayers. But I would tell you, my biggest naysayer was um, my former boss, the person who I was directly reporting to prior to leaving. Um, what was a person who, over the course of time in working with her, as well as kind of on the way out the door, there was just a lot of negativity in general about um, the the work that I did, and I never took that personally because of both results proving otherwise, as well as the value that I could see and my people told me that they were getting. However, there was a social media post that which was crazy to do this publicly, but there was a social media post that was uh, done by this person that said something to the effect of um, best of luck in your new adventures. You'll probably need more than luck to be successful. And yeah, right. And so um, it was fairly quickly deleted, but nevertheless, it got screenshotted and all that fun stuff for my posterity's sake, so I could use it as motivation. So the silencing in my mind was really about understanding that this was a person who, in my belief, didn't have an identity figured out, didn't have a set of values aligned to be able to guide moving forward, and was just doing things as reactions in the moment that felt good, even if they weren't good. And that that I that none of that had anything to do with me, none of it. And so for me, it was easy to kind of contextualize it in that way and let it fall right out of my mind. Particularly also because I knew that I was going to be doing work that was valuable and important to me, and so I didn't have any room even in my mind for anything like that to stick around. And so and the reality is that actually today talking to you is the first time that I've even shared that story with anybody other than my family. So yeah, it's been out of my mind for quite a while.
That's awesome. I love that. In my book, the Fuel Your Legacy 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy, that is actually the first topic I talk about, is how to, well, it's more like your haters is one of the nine pillars, but
Yep.
You need haters. I think having haters on one level is essential for creating a tribe. That's essential for creating separation and clarity and creating a team and camaraderie. So you need somebody to kind of push back against, but also I think in my opinion, and this is printed now, so it's not just my opinion. I'm not making this up right now. I've
It's
said this a
official.
lot, but um, the first step to overcoming naysayers, in my opinion, is to recognize that they don't believe. Like it's not about you. What they're doing, they're responding to their own belief system, their own identity, their own
Mhm.
perspective. And for me, and in my book, that's my whole message is rather than have anger or animosity or feel anything towards these people, I think you can feel something towards them, but compassion. And then the reason to go win big and build a meaningful legacy is to show them, those people who are saying that you couldn't do it, to show them that it's possible. That, yeah, you don't need more than luck. You can, if I can do it, you know me, you already didn't believe in me. If I can do it, then you can do it too. You can step out and you can follow your authentic self as well. And it's really a labor of love, in my opinion, to go at your dreams and reorganize and make decisions to go on your own journey. That's more of a labor of love and an act of love, especially for the people who are at the moment telling you that they don't believe you can do it.
Yeah, that's a great perspective on it, and I think right on the money too.
Yeah, I love that. So what would you say you're in this transition, going from corporate America where I mean, you obviously had a decent time, 18 years. Nobody spends 18 years somewhere they
Oh
hate.
yeah, yeah, it wasn't on accident, that's for sure. There was lots of decisions made to stay there, and it was great the whole time.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, when I talk to them, are like, oh man, entrepreneurship is awesome. They somehow get the opinion or the impression that I'm telling them that being an employee is the worst thing ever and nobody should be an employee. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I have employees and I'm grateful they want to be employees because I need people to do that. Um, but but I do believe that there's a certain level of freedom as an entrepreneur, and it's not for everybody, but for the people it is. And so when you're making that transition, it's not always that you're leaving something you don't like. Sometimes it's that you're stepping into something that you love more. And when you do that, what would you say your secret weapon was, either a habit or a mindset or a behavior that helped you move and make that transition and create your meaningful legacy?
Ooh, great question. All right, so yeah, leaving 18 years of what I knew, but also what I loved was a big decision, and I kind of shared my process on that. The the piece that really fueled me, and fueled that process, really stemmed from, and what I did, right? So it really stemmed from wanting to and knowing I can affect more people. So part of my process was becoming a student during the transition of people who are doing this work incredibly well. And that's kind of what led to the idea of the podcast, because I was having these conversations and I said, let's start recording these conversations, because I think other people could learn from it too, which again aligned with that value of just wanting to open this dialogue and continue to share what I felt was really meaningful and important change. And so a big part of it was for me building in a process where I'm constantly learning, no matter what, every day something new from someone new about this work, why it's important, how it's failed others, how others have succeeded in it, and building and creating and making more connections every day that kind of align with that, and then having those dialogue and conversations. That was an important first step of the journey. It gave reinforcement to the ideas that I would share back, and we would have back and forth dialogue on. It also awakened for me some other parts in the entrepreneurship part, because I'm talking with some folks who were founders of companies with 2 employees that are now CEOs of that same company that they've built to 2,000 employees. And so again, really gave me some of those critical insights on that entrepreneurial journey and how to fight through some of the initial obstacles that you face as an entrepreneur, particularly coming from a corporate world where you had the wealth of all of these amazing resources that now are just consolidated to what you have access to as an individual and your network. So that network part of it became such a valuable and important strength that informed kind of every day what I was growing and learning and applying in my work. I'll tell you a ritual, if we can call it that, that was started during this transition process was morning coffee with the wife. And I say that because the ability to be human and to just be present is such an important skill that in whether it's corporate or entrepreneurial, you're pulled a million directions at any given time. And so I love the freedom of being able to set my schedule and make sure that no matter what, I have that time and we're connected and we're aligned and I bounce ideas off of her and she bounces stuff off of me, whether it's business or life or you name it. But we didn't have that with our corporate stuff that was happening before because schedules and early stuff and meetings and all these things, uh, really just excuses. But creating that gave this launching point for every single day to make sure that we had our connection first, and then I could run out into the world and do all the things that I'm doing. And she runs out in the world and does all the things she's doing. And every day, no matter what, we have that piece. It's been huge in the stability that it takes of a family to transition from a corporate to an entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought in the whole family, because I think that, in my experience, anyways, it's a family effort, and it's a definitely the most successful people that I've seen do it have 100% committed spouses, which makes that possible. But I think one of the questions about that transition, and only because you didn't touch on it, that's why I'm asking this. But what about like the financial backing? Like, how did you quit
Mm.
a job and that you've worked for 18 years and and transition into, your, if you don't kill it, you don't eat it, basically,
Yep. Yeah.
financially? How'd your family handle that type of transitional stress?
Yeah, and there is some stress in that, no doubt. And that was definitely something that was important guidance that I received on a few things. But number one, when I left the organization, I did receive a pretty nice package that helped with some stability through the process, and that was very nice. That was awesome. I did not have the benefit of choosing a passion in a profession that has a bunch of products to sell or other things that banks would love
Sure.
to give some loans on. In a service-based industry, it's a little different, and so the reality was everything had to be self-funded. So it was a very, very structured budgetary process at the very beginning to lay out a we can survive for a year without any income coming in, if that's how long it takes, by having this process clearly laid out in place. And listen, I won't lie, there have been moments where there's some Uber driving to help make sure that no matter what, all the ends came together, um, early in the process there. And so I think that's more a matter of having a framework with your available resources to lay it out and know what it's going to last, to be able to have some stability. And then two, when and if there is anything that you can foresee based on having that framework laid out that is going to be a challenge, to find whatever avenue you can find to hold it together. And what's great about gig economy, I mean, it doesn't have to be Uber, it could be anything else. Maybe you're a writer, maybe you can code, anything else that you could do that could potentially just help cover those ends if necessary. Being able to have a plan on what that will be if you get there was super important for us to be able to kind of make it through those first few months.
Yeah, I love that, and I think more people need to just go back and listen to that last 5 minutes about that, because that's really where I think a lot of people get hung up. Their fear sets in, their fear overpowers their desire to live in an authentic purpose or a value alignment because they're scared of how to transition. And they think, well, what if it doesn't work? Or how can I survive? Right. And being willing to do maybe things that you're not passionate about. Uber driving, you're not passionate about certain things, but you're passionate about the end result. And so in the short term, you maybe do something just to make ends meet. Um, but it's with the intention of this is a short term thing for the long term solution, and staying focused on that. So key. I love it. So how, because we haven't really got into really what it is you do for companies. So what is it that you actually do? What's your business now? And how would we get in touch with you to get more access to? Obviously, anybody who's listening to this knows what he's talking about. He can absolutely add value to your life and help you. Even if you're still in the corporate world, he helped many people become successful in the corporate world, and now he's helping people become successful out of it. So it doesn't matter what you're doing currently professionally, he can help you. But like, what does that help look like? And then how do we actually get in touch with you? Where's the best place to connect?
Yeah, sounds good. So, yeah, the company Rudiment Solutions at the core, leadership development, management fundamentals, training, consulting, and coaching. But where I really specialize is in the culture building piece of it, to bring in that sense of belonging into a culture where you have people who feel like they're part of a community, that they trust, that they're loyal, and that ultimately leading to exceptional outcomes and delivering profits. That's really the work I do, and I do it in two facets. One, internally within the organization, so with employees, and feeling that true sense of, I belong here and I'm going to work hard here. And why this is so important, by the way, and why I do this work is productivity is 50% higher when organizations who are surveyed report that they have this sense of belonging, and growth is 6 points higher. Revenue growth is 10 points higher. Collaboration is 57% better. I'm going to spew out a few more
Wow.
stats, but I think it's important because this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Employees show up 3.5 more times. Employees show up at their full potential, and that's the big driver, because employees are going to give you 100% every day. Sometimes it's just 100% of what they're willing, not 100% of what they're capable. And that's where creating this culture is so important. And then here's the big kicker, right? So 19% more revenues than the average in your industry when you have an employee base that's reporting a sense of belonging, meaning that they feel trust, collaboration, and culture and community all align. And that's what's for the business. But for the people, and this is where I'm passionate about it, and this is why I like doing it so much, is people report 106% more energy, 76% more engagement. But my favorite part, 40% less burnout and 74% less stress, right? So the work I do is really around delivering those outcomes for the businesses that I work with. But we also do executive coaching, leadership, one-on-one coaching, to help people figure out and align their values to their career, even if that means leaving the company that they're with, whether that's finding another company, whether it's excelling in the company they're in, or maybe the entrepreneurial journey. So that's the other facet of the business too. And again, I'm so passionate about making sure that there's an alignment of values for people and their process and their purpose to be able to deliver the outcomes that they want. So the work we do is both with organizations internally and externally with a brand, because when you have a person who's willing to tattoo your company's logo on your body, I mean, that's a sense of community, right? Nobody tattoos Harley Davidson on their body because they, you know, just absolutely love the Harley Davidson they ride. They do it because they love what the tribe of being a Harley rider is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so they want everybody to see it and know it, even when they're not on their Harley and they're just wearing their cutoff t-shirt, right? So that's ultimately kind of the work we do, is to deliver those types of results and outcomes for our clients. And the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. The best way to find the organization, rudimentsolutions.com. You can go to belongingfactor.com if you want to learn more specifically about the culture pieces. And on LinkedIn, just Devin Halliday. You'll find me, pop right up at the top.
Awesome. Yeah. And we're going to have some of those links there in the show notes to make sure that people have it there. But I love it's interesting. I work with a lot of people on branding their small businesses, and I'm actually going through well, my the name of my company is not changing. I love the name of my company, but I'm changing the logo because of that exact question. Like, what would cause somebody to tattoo your logo on their body? Like, what type of story do you need? What type of movement do you have to create that much passion for what it is and desire to be in a tribe? And so I'm making my logo more tattooable.
A more tattooable logo.
I am.
I love it.
I like, because my logo right now, it's too I don't know. For me, I'm not in love with it. So I'm making it something that I love. And I'm like, okay, that's a cool thing that I would wear on I don't get tattoos. So I'm never going to tattoo it on my body, but I would put it on, I would wear it on a shirt. I'd wear it on a hat. I have no problem identifying with the logo. And I want it to be easier for my tribe to feel comfortable identifying with a logo, um, and be willing to wear that on themselves or on their merchandise, because that's important. That's an important part of um, building a community, is to build something that multiple people can join into. My initial brand, if you go on my website, it still has my name on it, and I, because of what's in alignment with me, I don't ever want to wear somebody else's name on my body other than Jesus Christ, which I'll proudly represent. But outside of him, I don't want anybody else's name on my body. Um, and so because of that, I'm also trying to help other people identify their identity and be comfortable wearing and promoting their own personal name. And so it's out of alignment with what I was trying to achieve by having my brand have my name on the brand.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah,
So
and it is about the community, right? I mean, that's where it grows and lives when you do it right. Is that community? I mean, that's, the Apple is one that comes to mind. Obviously Harley I already mentioned,
yeah,
where it's
Nike.
that community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So that's fantastic. We'll have the links in there. Thank you for sharing that. Now, here's the next section: legacy on rapid fire. So 5 questions here. We're going to ask them fast, 1 word to 1 sentence answers. Um, if your answer to this first question is myself, I will allow you to elaborate. Okay. It's kind of like, it doesn't help anybody. I've done some podcasts where people say, "Oh, it's myself." I'm like, okay, what part of yourself? Okay, so here's the first question. What do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy?
Well, geez. um, the answer is myself, and the elaboration on I mean, it is, and I think it kind of has to be. And the elaboration on myself is, um, right now, my level of experience in scaling my business to the next step, and needing to bring in the right partner to help me, at least evaluate and make a plan on how to do that.
Awesome. I love that. That was a good, I'm going to start telling people that, because that's this question. It really gauges people's awareness. Sometimes people like blame it on other people, and that's like the lowest of awareness. Then there's, okay, it's myself. I'm the one holding myself back. But then the next level of awareness is, what about yourself needs to change, or what about you is holding you back? So
Yep.
I love that. Now, what do you believe the hardest thing you've ever accomplished has been?
The hardest thing I ever accomplished, I would say, making it through boot camp.
I believe that. What is the greatest success at this point in your life?
My family, my children.
Love it. And what is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
Understanding that failure is just an opportunity to move forward in a different direction.
Okay. And if you were to give the Fuel Your Legacy audience 2 to 3 books to read, what would you recommend?
Real popular one that's out there, Start With Why, Simon Sinek. The principles, I think, are very sound in helping identify, a personal why and building outward from there. Another one, this is an old one, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Super informative, Jack Canfield. Super informative of my early years in figuring out what was important to me and how to respond to situations. And then 7 Habits, Stephen Covey. I think a phenomenal understanding of how to apply yourself as a human to making yourself truly capable and better at the things that you didn't even know you could do.
Completely agree. All 3 books, fantastic. We'll have links to them in the show notes here, but I agree. I'm excited to have people go read those. We actually on Wednesday did a book review of Start With Why. So if you missed that, go back and kind of hear my thoughts on that book specifically, things that I've learned from it and things that it helped me accomplish in my life. So here's my favorite question. Okay, we made it to the end, Devin, but this is my favorite question. We get to pretend that you have died. You're dead, gone. And it's 6 generations down. So we're sitting around a table or sitting watching your great, 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 great grandchildren sit around a table and they're discussing your life. They're talking about your legacy. What do you want them to be saying about Devin's legacy 6 generations from now?
I want them to be saying that they have no idea who the heck I am and they have to go back and figure it out. No, not that's not true. I want them to be saying that were it not for me, that they wouldn't have been the people that they are today for one specific kind of rule that my father, as a legacy, if you will, left with me, and I intend to have it live in many generations. And it's to follow a very, very simple formula. It's 2 rules in this formula. Number 1, don't panic. And number 2, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So I want them to be able to achieve greatness because that is passed on through them and they know that it came from here.
Awesome. I love it. Love it. Love it. Well, that is a wrap for today. Super excited for all the things that are going to happen to your business and where you grow. We'll probably have you on again because I just like talking to you, and people who I like talking to, I invite back on.
Right. I like talking to you as well.
Yeah, no, but you're going somewhere, and I love what you're creating. And that's there's some people I have on there. They aren't always, I mean, they're on their journey, but not in 100% alignment with Fuel Your Legacy. But there's a few. I think that you are one of them where your mission is very, very closely tied to what my mission and vision for the Fuel Your Legacy audience is. And so that's really, I love this conversation. I'm excited to have you back on in the future. Is there anything else that you would leave as parting guidance for our group?
My parting guidance is this: be genuinely and eternally curious about the world around you. Ask questions of people to learn something about them. Ask questions about the environment that you're in to learn something about it. Every place and every person has a story. Don't assume a person's story. Don't assume a place's history. Take the time to ask. Take the time to learn. You will be a better person and a more capable person for it. And you might just build a new connection or a new person in your network that has unbelievable value that you can share with each other.
Amen. That's it. We'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.